How's it going, everybody? This is Martin Stokes here.
And this is Dean Scurry.
And I'm a traveller.
And I'm a countryman.
Welcome to A Traveller
and a Countryman
podcast.
Episode 19, A Traveller and a Countryman podcast.
Well, we have a very special guest here now this evening with us, Jimmy Judge. My first time to actually meet him, so I'm going to ask him loads of questions and hopefully he'll fire a few back at me as well. So, Jimmy, welcome on board.
Thank you very much, Martin. Good to meet you tonight. Obviously, I do, Dean. I met you for the first time. Well, I feel I've known you from listening to the podcast.
Yes.
So, you actually look exactly the same as I imagined.
Yeah.
You know the way you picture someone as you're listening to them, you haven't seen them. So.
I hope it's a good picture, was it?
Oh, fucking handsome bastard, yeah.
Wow.
Actually, a mate of mine says he can't wait for people to meet you because your voice on the podcast is just so nice.
Yes?
Yeah.
Were they male or female?
Does that matter? It mattered to you, obviously.
No, I'll tell you what you're reminding me of now, Dean. You remind me of, remember I told you this before, but Charlie Pride, the singer, yeah?
Yeah.
The most beautiful girl in the world.
He was behind, he's a brilliant singer, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He was behind the curtain for years. And they didn't know, he's an American singer. You heard of Charlie Pride, did you?
I think, no, he wasn't the most beautiful girl in the world. That was Charlie Rich.
He's a country singer. And he couldn't show himself because there was too much racism in the country at the time.
He's black, that's right.
And they decided, look at the producers basically, and he's whoever signed him, his record label. They told him, look, it's best if we just sing behind the curtain. But what happens then, he has so many concerts, and he was actually sitting behind the curtain for whatever length of time anyway. And after so many concerts then, the people, they wanted to see who he was. So they just threw back the curtains and the people to give him a round of applause. They still loved him.
Absolutely.
But he had a brilliant voice.
Yeah. So Martin Pride.
So call me what you want, I'm with you with that.
Yeah, but so he
it's
was
just
saying,
I don't take pride in it, that's all.
He was saying your voice is very poetic. It has a kind of a rhythm and a tone, and it just sounds nice. And he said he can't wait for people to actually see it and
Tell
meet
him
you.
someday we'll draw that curtain.
Very good. Because I was telling them that we're doing our first live podcast, and I'm going to plug it now. We're doing our first live podcast in front of an audience in November 18th at 10 o'clock in the morning, hopefully in front of a full house in the Access, and our guest is Senator Lynn Ruane, and people are going to meet you and see you and shake your hand.
Lovely.
God. That's it, they don't run me out the door.
No better woman too to be having with you, yeah, Lynn.
Yeah, well, she's excited. I was going to have Lynn just turn up and do a talk, because I'm doing a thing called the Ballymun Summit, which I'll probably get you to talk at, Jimmy, as well, if you're free on that weekend, 18th, 19th and 20th, and we're going to discuss health and fitness, but in general, what is your medicine is the kind of the topic or the theme. So I was going to get Lynn to come down and just talk about D-Crim, because she's into D-Crim, but then I decided, why don't we just do a live show, Traveller and a Countryman, try and get 200 people in the theatre at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Brilliant.
And have a bit of crack, and then people can meet Martin.
Please God, I look forward to that, that'd be nice.
So I was saying to Martin the other day, Martin, if you take the lead on today, it'll just be great preparation for the live show, because the live show, the dynamic is going to be so different. You're going to have an audience. For the first time in his life, he's going to have an audience. He never had an audience. He was only in the Access Theatre at a thing for the first time in his life the other day. And in a few weeks' time, it's going to be on stage. The show is going to be me and him doing our podcast. So I can imagine in his head, that's going to be a whole new experience. It's a lot of stuff.
You'd imagine you get a little bit more practice than that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Through straight into the deep end.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the best, though, man.
Sink or swim.
Sometimes if you have too much time to think about something,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You get into your head about it rather than just.
It's like here now this evening, because this is my first time to meet you. Basically, I really know nothing about you, if you want to put it that way. I did try asking Dean a few questions. He said, it's okay, you'll find out yourself.
Yeah.
So I think he thought he was Tommy Tiernan there for a while.
Right.
Putting on the guests. I don't even know who was going to be interviewing.
Well, funny, you know what I was thinking when you were talking about the Charlie Pride experience, Martin, there? I was thinking of the parallel process. I was thinking like of, I don't know what the term is, and I know Dean speaks about it, I speak about it, where there's no colour difference. Like Charlie Pride was behind the curtain because it's the racist thing, because he was black, right? So for travellers, for working class people, we don't necessarily look different. But there's what's the ism that's there?
Yeah, and
accent.
There is accents, and sometimes we do look different. Like, I know your young fella got a what I would call a pure traveller haircut on him the other day.
Right.
And from me, from 100 metres, he looks like a pure traveller.
What's a pure
So, Dean,
traveller?
what's a
Just
pure,
like-
yes, what's a pure traveller haircut?
And so I said this a few weeks ago, and you can get all fearful and go, oh, I can't describe it because then I might be racist.
Mm-hmm.
But I would know, if I see a young fella from Ireland in Spain walking down the street, I know who it is.
Big Irish head in
You know, a big Irish head in him. Yeah. So there is an equivalent for travellers. There's a big traveller head. And we all know what it is. It just mightn't be tangible. We mightn't be able to describe it. But definitely a slick back haircut is one of those things. Because I remember loads of travellers in Ballymun growing up looked like Elvis.
Yeah.
They had this thing going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I remember travellers in the 70s, right? And there was the kind of Elvis look, but they had cowboy boots. 'Cause you were
Yes.
talking about cowboy boots and that kind of Elvis hairstyle, and you just knew straight away it was a traveller from how he looked
Yes.
for that reason.
Too much imitation,
You know?
was it?
Yeah, and the big, the
Big
sideburns.
locks, the sideburns, yeah, that's right.
Pretty much in the 70s,
Yeah, that would have been a big thing with them, all right, back then.
So the cowboy thing we brought up a couple of times in the early episodes.
I've heard them. that conversation.
Because in my head it was like, how come travellers seem to be into cowboy movies and cowboys and not Indians? You know what I mean? It's all
always
John Wayne and guns, but it's not Indians. But yeah, Indians live in tents. And I just couldn't resolve that in my head. I didn't know why.
Well, I thought when I was listening to that conversation, this might be interesting, Martin, for you. As a kid, like a couple of travellers I met in school, I'm going back to the mid-70s now, early mid-70s. A couple of travellers, and it was in Kilbarrack at that time. And they were from Eden, Coolock, all around that area. And I didn't even know whether they were travellers. We connected. You know, one of them, you just connected with someone. And I remember thinking, because of even how they looked, and these are really dark, really handsome looking guys, you know, for some reason they always reminded me of Native Americans.
Yes.
Do you know? And then back in them days, you actually had the tents, the tarpaulin, and that
Yes,
type of stuff.
yes.
And in my fantasy, like, I had this romantic idea that they were like the Native American Indians, and I was drawn to that kind of thing, you know. But then, like Dean says, everyone was into cowboys. I was thinking, oh, hang on a minute. Do you know? It was a little bit confusing because I always thought they were an indigenous people. Some could say maybe the first people settled in Ireland. I don't know what the history of that is, but they're an indigenous people. They're an ethnicity of their own. And they very much reminded me of the Native Americans in terms of even the way society would have treated them.
When you say Native Americans, are you talking about complexion or sort of dark skin and stuff like that?
A little bit of that, Martin, but just more energy and the kind of, living in tents, for example.
Yeah.
The tribe, the kind of togetherness, the community, that feel.
The land.
The land on the outside a bit, pushed out of their land,
Yes.
moving around, having to move on, all that type of stuff.
I just watched a documentary a mate of mine made, and I urge everybody to go and see it. It's called Pure Grit. It's a girl called Kim Bartley, and she went to a reservation in America. And so she was over there doing some filming with John Connors about, African Americans, native First people, and she came across these bareback horseback riders. And one of the girls she kind of latched onto, and she said, right, I'm going to make a documentary with this family. So they made a documentary, and basically their life reminded me of my life growing up in Ballymun in the 80s. But these guys were out hunting as well for their food. But so much of it reminded me of the traveller culture here. And actually, John was at this film the other day, and he was doing the Q&A with the director. And there was just so many things that they had in common between the native First people of America, as we would call them typically Indians
yeah.
and the travelling community in this country. And you alluded to something there, and we talked about this before, that I feel that we're all First people. We all came from, the travelling people are First people. We all came from travellers. As embarrassing as that might sound for some people, that's what I feel inside me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I wouldn't find that embarrassing in myself. I'd be
Yeah, I know, but some people go,
interested
there's
in
no
that.
way we came from them. They're all bleeding this, that, and the third. But I think it depends on where you go back to. What's the point you start from? Is it 100 years ago? Is it 600 years ago? Where do we go back? And I think we were all, probably across Europe, nomadic.
Absolutely.
All moving with the season, with the tides, with the animals, with the sun.
We lived in a trailer, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, at one point, yeah. My dad had this bright idea. Like, we were in England in the late 60s, early 70s. And my dad was like, we're going back home. We're always going to come back home, to Dublin. And I think we were to get a house in Kilbarrack, but it wasn't ready yet. So he got this idea of buying this, they called them mobile homes, but it was a trailer. It wasn't a proper big mobile home or anything like that. So we lived in that for 6 months in the winter. It was fucking freezing. I've no romantic ideas about that,
No.
It was,
Imagine doing that all your life.
exactly. That's what I was thinking since then. I was only a kid then, and I've thought about that since.
Yeah.
We knew eventually we were going to get a house, emptying out the toilet, all that, no running water, all the usual stuff,
So you had the experience of being a traveller for 6 months.
I did. Yeah.
And we talked about the implications of that on the modern traveller family life. And the implications are health.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Poor health. And it affects you over time, especially if it's grand during the summer. We all like going to bleeding France and sitting in a bleeding caravan for 2 weeks with your family. When it's 26 degrees, you're laughing. But when it's minus 26 degrees in bleeding January,
Different story.
and you have to go across the pissy, wet, bleeding courtyard to get a bucket of water. There's no pumped water in the bleeding caravan, you know what I mean? Over time, over 10, 15, 20 years, you're 50 now, Martin. That affects your health.
Well, of course it does, but more to the older ones, they would have had it a lot rougher and tougher, back again, living in tents and living in, say, basic accommodation that probably wouldn't even fit to be living at times, you know what I mean? Now today, yeah, there's a bit of improvement, but a lot still living in caravans, there'd be a few travellers between England and Ireland. There'd be a few travellers living in houses. But they still class themselves as travellers, even though they're living in houses, It's more than just moving around. It's in their blood, you know what I mean?
Of course it is, yeah.
It's their heritage,
Yeah, get the itch.
Yeah, now, as I said, the older ones would have experienced, let's say, harder times. Be out there chopping the wood and having those stove in the caravan, that'd be the only bit of heating. No such thing as pipes running through the caravans or radiators or stuff like that, Like you said, Jimmy, you experienced it for 6 months.
Yeah.
So that is the reality of it,
And it was tough.
Yeah.
That's
right.
And we had the knowledge, at some point where the house was getting painted or something.
Yes, look, you were still looking forward to something better, yeah.
Absolutely, Maren. Yeah.
So anyway, do you want to tell us a little bit about you, Jimmy? You do?
Whatever. What would you like to know? I always feel a bit like, even when Dean, you were saying to me, and you can come and talk at that thing, I have that imposter syndrome. I'm kind of going, what am I going to talk about?
Yeah, well, let me know how you get on with that for the rest of your life, Jimmy. Or else just be the amazing person that you are, because we're all amazing.
We're all amazing imposters at 60. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're amazing. You're here because I love you, because I grew up in Ballymun looking at you going, he's at the sussing a way out of this. Right. He's at the sorting it out in his fucking head. This is how you navigate the fucking wilderness, the wildness, the matrix that is fucking Ballymun in the 70s.
How did you know that? What was it? I didn't, as it happened. I was struggling, obviously. But what did you see?
That's what I seen. I seen my mates all playing ga and being altar boys, and at the age of 12, and then 2 years later, heroin. And I was going, what the fuck is going on here? And I looked down towards Yap, and I knew that you had a connection in there through my mate Sparky.
Yeah.
And I was kind of referred there because we were up to all kinds, sniffing and robbing and doing all types of stuff. And then I went in and I seen you and I heard your voice, and you spoke like people that I was comfortable around. Right. You know what I mean? You had a kind of towny vibe off you. Right. You know what I mean? Because I knew townies. My dad was from Sheriff. My dad was from East Wall, and you had that kind of Dublin voice. And you knew what you were talking about. You weren't telling me or my mates what to do. You were listening to where we were at. And I went, that's fucking interesting.
Right.
Because we're at being told for the last number of years to do all these things. And we kind of tried to follow the instructions, but they've led us to where we are now. And you and people like you, like Sparky and so on, were just listening to where we were at.
Okay. Right.
So I would have held you up there and went, you're fucking deadly.
Right.
There are more people leading like you.
Right.
So you must be a long time around Ballymun then, Jimmy, so yeah?
I lived in Ballymun from 1979 to 1995, on and off, in and out a few times, but pretty much all that time. We were Kilbarrack and Coolock prior to that. We were everywhere. Our family broke up kind of thing,
right.
Quite young, and everyone went everywhere kind of thing, So I landed in Ballymun in 1979. went to Yap in about 86, 87.
So there's a journey before that. You were in Kilbarrack with your family. Where's your man and dad? Were your man and dad there? And if so, where are they from?
Ma and dad, no, were separated. They were separated from early 70s. So my dad was from, funny, I was just thinking, he has got dementia now, and I was chatting to him recently, and you know with dementia, kind of like the short-term memory goes, but the long-term memory is there. He's in his mid-80s, he's from Cabra, and he was telling me about, he could name everybody in the street in Cabra, and he was telling me all about, and Mrs. White, I used to get her messages for her, and used to get her smokes, you know, and he had a nickname, he was a stocky little fella, they called him Fatser.
Fatser?
Yeah, but Mrs. White couldn't pronounce Fatser. She said, Atzer, go get me cigarettes.
Atzer Judge?
Atzer Judge. But that just stayed for a little while and left that, you know. So he was Cabra. Then he moved to Donecarney. My mum was from, you know, that lovely part of Drumcondra where that little corporation state, Joyce Road, around that area. She was from there. They moved to Donecarney as well. That's where they met in Donecarney in, I think, the 40s, 50s. He had a very, very big family. There was like 12, 14 of them. I had a relatively small family, you know. They were a bit quieter. He says, you know, my dad's family were a bit more rough than hers. They were quiet, just ordinary working class people. My man.
Where did he meet her? Do you know?
Somewhere in Donecarney. They moved to Donecarney. Well,
and how many of yous was there?
Okay, there's one older brother, Brendan. There's me, a year younger. There's Desi, and then there's Nuala, a year younger again, and then there's Jer. She's in Liverpool, a year younger again. We're all like a year down.
Many of yous?
Then there's Vinny, 6. And
was your man and dad, were they working? Had they jobs, or were your man at home?
Maz was a mam and a housekeeper and doing all that type of work. My dad, all his family were painters and decorators, but he kind of never took to it as such. So he became a driver. Then he was a bus driver and a coach driver and a colliery driver. He always drove. That was his kind of thing then, you know. And he was drinking and irresponsibility, and like, so he was pretty much what they would call an absent father, you know. So he wasn't around for a long time, basically. Yeah, my mum did an amazing job just rearing us pretty much on her own.
I remember my dad talking about his dad, and he said to me, "I've seen me dad twice."
He's about his father,
yeah,
right,
like properly. That just hit me because I have a stunning relationship with my father. I'm blessed, honoured, privileged.
Lovely.
You know what I mean? He's seen his dad twice, and I felt for him, you know, because I know that my relationship with my dad is vital, is lovely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I hear other people say he wasn't there, or I just say, you know, I don't know what to bleed and say there, you know.
So was your dad around, was he physically around quite a lot, do you?
He was. Now he was, my ma said this on the other podcast, he was there, but he was also drinking when he was there.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Yeah, sometimes like, you know, dads can be drinkers, they can be present. My dad wasn't present. He was more, you know, he was just into it. He was like a single man.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? He was like, I'm glad he was married because we wouldn't be here otherwise. I'm glad they did get together. But he was like the kind of man who was never meant to be a father, if you like. I think he found the responsibility too much if I'm being kind to him. You know, the kind of way. You know, I have an okay relationship with him. It's, you know, ups and downs and stuff, but he just physically wasn't there. I think he fled and he drank and he did his thing and he just, you know, I don't think he wanted the responsibility of kids. But like, that said, he's tried his best in his own ways to kind of make amends. And
maybe it was one of his weaknesses. He's probably a good man behind it all.
I believe so, Martin. I think most human beings are, you know, I really do believe.
And if he was a hard grafter as well, he was.
Yeah, for himself. But yeah, he was.
Yeah.
I tell you, one of his great qualities, he was a kind person in terms of like, he'd look after you with money if you had it. He'd piss and moan about it forever, but you'd get it, you know what I mean? You know, and then he's the kind like, don't be getting me cards now, but if you don't get me a card, like, well, no one ever bother with me.
Yeah. Do anyone want chips? No, when the chips come in, he eats half the bag.
But I think he's probably quite an insecure, frightened human being deep down, you know, and just struggled to try and have a family. And as far back as I can remember, he was never physically there. He always, like when we were in England as kids, we always born in England. My mum and dad went over to England, to Birmingham, and then to Liverpool, and then to London, and then to Southampton, because my dad, they got work driving the buses. And we were always the odd ones out because I was actually Chris and Seamus. Not many people know that. Yeah. And so we stood out like a sore thumb. Down in England like Seamus. What fucking hell, Seamus?
Is that why you changed your name?
Not really, no. That happened in Ireland.
Okay, yeah.
That happened when we came home. I didn't even, they were, who the fuck, Seamus? But that just kind of grew playing football, Jem, Jay, whatever. Like, I actually like Seamus. My family all call me Sheo. But Jimmy just caught on. I remember my mum was saying to me the other day, she said, I can remember when someone knocked at the door saying, "Is Jimmy there?" I'm saying, I don't have a Jimmy. I have a Seamus. Do you know?
Yeah.
So it's just a funny thing that just kind of evolved.
So on your passport,
My passport is Jimmy now.
No way.
Yeah. It's strange. It just grew. It's a strange thing.
Barry saying Seamus.
Yeah, birthday Seamus.
That's fucking
yeah.
mad. It just caught on.
But I had a memory, right? Right, I work as a counsellor, a psychotherapist. I do that type of work. I go about with trauma. And I had a memory. I don't know what, maybe thinking about coming on here, I don't know what it was that triggered the memory in my mind of being in England, right? And I was about 6 or 7. And we were the only Irish family in the little small estate we were living in, right? Council estate type of place. And we were known as, myself and my brother Desi, we used to like playing football. He was a good little footballer, as I was. We were always out playing football, but we were referred to as the little Irish boys. Right? We were always the little Irish boys, Shay and Desi. But I'm out on my own this time, and this young fella comes along. I don't kind of know him. He's a year or two older than me. He has this fantastic bike. I always wanted a bike, you know. He says, "Do you want to go on a bike?" I said, "Yeah, give us a go on it." And I'm cycling around. It was a fabulous, beautiful bike, right? And he, you know, and you could see how much I was enjoying it. And he said to me, "You can have it, keep it." I said, "Nah, you're joking me." "Nah, you can have it, no problem, you can keep it." And I'm thinking, "Oh, that's really kind of him, isn't it, right? Waiting to hear what's coming." I said, "Are you sure?" I'm naive. I'm 6, 7, maybe 7. He said, "Yeah, fuck, I've got another one on, you can have it." I was like, fucking proud. Bring it in, I put it in the shed, run into the gaff. "Ma'am, I have this." She says, "No, you have to bring that back. You know, the usual. You can't." No. So, next thing that happened was there was this really loud knock on the door. Boom, boom, boom. Open the door, and his ma's there, and she was a big woman. I remember she had tattoos on her arms, right? And a bun and glasses.
Was
right?
she from Liverpool?
No, this was down the south of England, right?
In Birmingham.
No, this is down in Southampton.
Oh,
down that
okay,
area.
okay.
And she says, "Goes my fucking son's bike." And I'm going, "What are you talking about?" "Little Irish boy stole my son's bike."
Oh, no.
My mother's real quiet. She's not a fighter. "You're fucking Irish." All this is going on, right? Screaming at the door. I'm thinking, oh no. I'm going into trauma. Like, I'm thinking, I'm guilty. I started all this. So I had to go out to the shed, give the bike back, calm your woman down. Because I thought she was going to start hitting me. My mom's real quite a quiet woman, you know.
Yeah.
She's not. She's very dignified kind of a woman, you know. She was like gone white. What the fuck's all this? Give the bike back. The next thing that happened was, my mother lay on the couch. She felt quite sick, right? Obviously and then everything went blank. So I had my first experience of dissociating because it was all too painful. My bike was gone. It was confusing. I felt guilty. I felt scared. I felt I was going to be in trouble.
So you had like a blackout.
I had a blackout. And I vomited. I remember vomiting. And my mum was sick as well. She got an awful fright. The whole atmosphere in the house was horrible. Then I just remember the next day. So now I understand that's dissociating.
So is that like what we used to call fainting?
Yeah, it was kind of like a dissociating, like a faint, when something's too painful and it's overwhelming, right? Because it went from joy to having this fantastic bike and thinking, he's a fucking nice fella, isn't he? You know what I
There's
mean?
loads of things in that. One is, was your man taking the piss out of you?
I never knew to this day. I never
And the
found
other
out.
thing is, when I remember growing up and I used to have these things, I think they were petit mals or like small epileptic fits.
Yeah.
I would look out the window and the whole world would slow down. And I think it was got to do with that. I think me mind was processing the stuff that I couldn't understand, you know.
Okay.
My ma and dad, the poverty, the mad stuff that was going on in the Ballymun. Now I say that like it was like bleeding Oliver. There was loads of great stuff in community, but I think that this was like my bike incident with you.
Right.
This is how I dealt with it.
Right.
I would have these little, I just look out the window, everything would slow down and I'd drift away for a minute.
This was similar though. I don't remember actually fainting. Just time dropped out. Time out of mind is.
So did you say Birmingham as well?
No, they went to Birmingham, Warwick first. They were
Okay.
for
'Cause
work.
Martin had a bit of Birmingham time as well.
Time, yeah.
Martin's mates, Martin hung out with the UB40 lads in Birmingham.
Right. Great band.
Yeah, good band.
Great
UB40,
band.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I think they had a lot of Irish. They went to Birmingham and they had relatives there. Then they moved around to London, and then someone said there's loads of bus work going down in Southampton. It's on the coast. It's nice. Go down there. They got a bit of work there. And my mother's sister lived in Liverpool, so we had a strong connection there all the time, which is how I followed Liverpool football team, because we
Same as
cousin
me.
Annie.
I was Liverpool from, like, I was red till bleeding the day I die. And then about 15 or 16, I realised these lads are being paid. They're being paid what in a week what my dad's earning in 10 years. So I just stopped following it. I just went, I'm not really into that anymore.
Right.
I love me dad. My dad's my superhero, not these bleeding football players.
Okay.
So there's a few little threads.
Go on.
Well, one is you said I'm a psychotherapist.
Therapist.
And so how do you get from your
Dissociation.
dissociation to yap to saying out loud, I'm a psychotherapist?
I'll tell you a little bit about it's a great way of putting it, Dean. That's an interesting journey. So being what I call them the Irish Sea kids. There's loads of Irish Sea kids. That's all the kids that were, their parents went over to England. There's probably a lot of travellers have this experience as well, Martin. Go over to England for work in the 50s, 60s, then come back over. You kind of caught between the Irish Sea. We're always coming back and forth, that kind of thing. A bit of an identity struggle because you're trying to fit in over there, then you're trying to fit in over. When you're over there, you're like, little fucking Irish boys, and you're over here like, you fucking English cunts. You don't know where you are.
But there was lovely, I found there was lovely lessons when I went to Liverpool, because I was seeing stuff that was a bit more adventurous and advanced, and you go, fucking hell, I'm going to bring that back to Ballymun.
Yes. I never thought as a kid of being like, I'm going to be a psychotherapist. I loved playing football. I was handy enough at it. I was good, as was my brother Desi. But I wouldn't have been good enough to develop further. Like you realise when you play, then you play other lads and you think you got that really good, I'm handy enough. Yes. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but there was a lot of stress. And, as I said, Dad would have been absent. So I'm talking about speeding up to being about 12, 13, 14. We're in Kilbarrack. We got the house. We're in Kilbarrack. We moved from the caravan, which was in Portmarnock for a while.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Which sounds really great, doesn't it? But it's fucking freezing. Do you know what I mean?
It was the winter time in Portmarnock.
At the sea.
If you're me, you love it, because you're in your wetsuit and you're surfing. But if you're a family in a bleeding caravan in the 70s,
trying to adapt to coming back home again, all that stuff. But got the house in Kilbarrack. That was grand. School, but there was a lot of, I heard you talking a bit about, your mum talking. There's a lot of stress and strains, a bit of poverty, things weren't working out. I think there was a lot of fear, a lot of sad things that I can name now that I didn't know then. Confusion. Who am I? What am I going to do? But I ended up in Greendale Community School in Kilbarrack, right, which was a famous community school because it was one of the first of its kind. Roddy Doyle taught there. He taught there after I left. Well, I say I left, I was expelled from that school. My claim to fame is I was the first person to be expelled from Greendale Community School. Ladies and gentlemen, here I am. That was me.
That's not much of a claim to fame.
And the principal, you will never amount to nothing, Judge.
You done that very Pink Floydy, like this guy is like, he's determining the rest of your life for you. And I'm sure you went, fuck off you tick.
Yeah. Then the kind of stuff I was doing was just messing and I was distracted. I probably, the way they didn't have ADHD diagnosed, I probably was a bit something or other or whatever. I was a bit in trauma, a bit in fear, but I was acting out. Basically.
We had that. We were in the church here playing hopscotch. Is it something like that? Whatever it is, the one that you fuck the ball at the person in the church. Scotch. And the priest came out halfway through the game. Don't you know you're in God's house? And we were like, I'm fucking 8. Leave me alone.
Playing Scotch.
We were just playing.
Yeah. All my dad's family were all painters and decorators. There was bits of work happening there. It was kind of fiddling around with that type of work, getting bits and pieces here and there. But I was also, the alcohol had come in. Back then, there was no heroin around. There was heroin, it wasn't really around in the working class areas in the 70s. Right. So it was all flagons and that type of stuff. And something your ma said, Dean, I was listening, really triggered me or I could identify with. I remember she said, I didn't like the taste, but I liked the effect. And I was the same. I couldn't stand the taste of it, but I loved the drunk feeling. But my body couldn't, my body couldn't take it. My body was allergic to it, But I insisted on having it, and I couldn't manage it, And
it helped.
Yeah, it's kind of pain relief,
numbing.
Numbing. But I was also dabbling with cough bottles as well, Benylin and that type of stuff. Because
I never really got it. I never really got that. We were up to mad stuff like Tipex, petrol,
gas, glue.
There was people doing glue. I never done glue. Gas. One of the boys died at the garage here from gas and so on. But the cough bottles, I was always thinking, what are you drinking cough bottles for?
Well, I know why I liked them. You didn't have to. The problem with alcohol for me was my body couldn't take it. all the stop fucking drinking, George. You can't drink. You know what I mean? My body couldn't take it, but I had a mind insisting on having it. Martin, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But my body couldn't handle it. It made me vomit. It made me uncomfortable. But I loved the effect. And there was too much of it. You know, there was too much volume of it. Cough bottle was only a little bottle of Benylin, Actifed, Fenzadol. It was a little small bottle. It was kind of sweet. And it gave you a nice kind of like drowsy effect with a slight hallucination. It was kind of like, I like the goof effect. I like that. You know, I wasn't one of them like, I was never a social kind of drinker. I just wanted to be on my own.
You didn't want the high.
No.
Yeah.
I wanted the unconscious feeling.
Yeah.
I like that kind of.
Comfortably numb, that kind of.
Pink Floyd, comfortably numb, which is why so many people identify with that. So it was that kind of stuff then as well. That was in and out of that. Thank God, you know, I didn't get into too much trouble. A few court appearances for petty stuff, you know, the kind of thing, shoplifting, blah, 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 nothing serious. But I know I embarrassed my family because the guards were called to the house a few times for that. And none of my family were in trouble.
You don't bring them bleeding guards to this house.
That wasn't none of them, you know, and I felt really bad about that, you know, and it was for stupid little fucking things, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I couldn't be a hard man even though I tried, you know, there was, like everywhere, there was fucking mad fuckers around, but I just couldn't be one of them. I wanted to be one.
I think that's why I identify with you so much, because I'm very soft.
Yeah.
I'm 6 foot, I have a big mouth, I'm from Ballymun, and I've done shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Robbed stuff and battered people and all that, but I'm very soft.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'd rather hug you and have a conversation with you than bleed and rob you.
Well, it's interesting. That's the way I was back then. And I think I probably started my psychotherapy career at 14 or 15 because I was a bit soft and people liked talking to me. And I resisted that at the time, you know, because I was trying to be hard, but it wasn't working. And they kept saying to me, you're not fucking hard. We just, you know, surrender. Yeah, it's not you. You haven't the hard. And I was wearing the shapes, you know, throwing the shapes and wearing back in the day it was like brogues with steel tips, you know, in the 70s. But people like talking to me, you know. I realise now as I'm looking back and people felt safe with me and when I stopped resisting it and kind of surrendered to it, I go, yeah, okay, maybe this is my way in the world. I didn't think I was going to be a therapist because if you're from Kilbarrack or Coolock or Ballymun or you're not going to be a therapist. That's other people do that type of work. I was expelled from school. Fuck all. I have no qualifications. What am I going to do? But here I am. People generally talk to me, you know. And even the maddest of the gang would call me on my own. Jimmy, come here. Don't tell anyone this. And they talk about their relationships.
Yeah, and that was a role that I had as well.
Did you?
Like the negotiator.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was listening to a cognitive behavioural therapist the other day on another podcast, and he was saying that part of ADHD or being on the spectrum is empathy, and with empathy that you're in touch with other people and their emotions and they can sense that off you, and that's the thing where we start to talk.
I was always trying to stop the fight from happening or anticipating, you know, smelling the trouble. Here comes Bambo or Bilbo or Smart, he's after drinking loads of flagons and he's a mad cunt, he's come up to fight and I'd be intercepting that, you know what I mean? Here he comes, there's going to be murder. And so I'd be intercepting, doing the negotiating, that kind of stuff. Torn my stomach.
There's the negotiator there across the room.
Right, you do that with the traveller.
That's what I see as Martin in his community.
Are you identifying with this, Martin? Are you?
I like to keep a bit of peace, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd say you can manage yourself as well, I'm sure.
I wouldn't say that. I like to, if I see trouble brewing now, I'd like to sort of get a word in there and try and get it stopped.
Would you smell it early? Would you see it?
Yeah, sort of. And sort of make people see a bit of sense, like, you know what I mean?
Okay. Well, that's the same thing then. That's what we're talking about. The same thing.
Generally, it works, like, you know. Because look, it depends. As you said, your man come up the road here, and he's out for it. Like, you know,
you can feel the vibe.
You want to be careful. He doesn't throw the dig at you. Well, the referee.
That's the thing.
or the peacemaker.
Martin, for some reason, probably because I wasn't giving off a kind of a macho element, they would never throw a dig at me.
No.
Like, ask Jimmy, he's grand. I'll just talk. They weren't losing face by talking to me.
And your mate Niall Guy taught me a very good thing, because we used to do outreach street work in Ballymun about 15 years ago, and he said, Dean, if it gets to that point, always remember to say their name back to them.
Right.
Their real name.
Yeah.
How are you, Tony?
Yeah.
All right, it's good to see you, Tony.
Yeah.
Because they're not stabs her then, or, you know, hat you. All right, hat you. Just say their name back to them.
Yeah, see the human being.
Yeah. The human part.
Blend out the situation a little bit.
I'm in love with the human part of people. I love to find that within them.
Yeah.
Help them find it. I think that's one of the things that I do, is try and help people find the human part in it.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
You're a conductor for that, yeah, definitely. the path to psychotherapy was probably began then. I didn't know that, you know, and then even as I got a bit older, and even working on building sites and all back in the day, you know, bit of trouble brewing. The lads would always talk to me, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Listen
very
to him,
good.
he talks blatant sense, you know what I mean? I can talk to you, you know, that type of stuff.
Right, hold on for a sec. Before we get into it,
Yeah.
the accents and the voices, I fucking love them. You're always doing the little thing. All right, Pancho, what's going on? It's one of the ways that you express yourself. It's
Yeah.
like a creative thing that you do.
I don't know, I don't know.
You put on the fucking accent you can. You do it all the time. It's lovely. Right. It kind of softens you up a little bit, and you you're painting a picture through all the accents. You probably don't even notice that you're doing it.
No,
but you do it all the time, and it's beautiful.
All right.
Yeah, it's really good.
So, Jimmy, when you say you're a psychotherapist, is it?
Yeah.
Do you have an
I'm
office
a
for this?
psycho.
Or you're a psycho.
psycho.
Do you have an office for this, or does people come to you or book out and all that? Like?
I have, at the moment, I'm doing it about 35 years, Martin, so
Very good.
I'm in my own practice now.
So is this like an occupation for you?
It's my job. This is how I pay the bills.
It's your job, yeah.
Yeah. 9 to 5 or 10 to 8, whatever
So
it is.
people generally come to talk to you like that have problems or...
Yeah. So like I'm kind of established now in that sense, Martin. Like, so I currently rent a room in a therapy centre in the inner city in Garden Street.
Very good.
There's a therapy centre there, and I have my own room there. But because I'm known a long time, like I've worked with addiction for years, as Dean said, I worked in Yap and Ballymun here from the mid-80s.
Yes.
You know, and then I worked in treatment centres, and I've worked in lots of different places. So a bit of a slut. I've been around the lap, you know, kind of thing. And it's the devil, you know, so I'd have an okay reputation as such. People say, oh, yeah, man, Jimmy, go to him, type of thing, you know.
Very good.
Difference is now I'm getting paid for it.
How did you get to Yap from being a kid, from being the dude who navigates those tricky conversations with people?
Great question. I love your question. It's a fantastic question.
Amazing, yes.
I was just saying to Dean earlier on, it's amazing the way he comes into this community, right, and helps out these poor unfortunates. And he has the Traveller on with him. It's amazing. Great to see him. You're fantastic people. How that happened was my father was in the Rutland Centre in 1978. His addiction brought him into treatment. And the Rutland was brand new then, and it was like the shit hot place to go. Everyone was terrified of it. It was all about challenging, confrontation, no mollycoddling, but a really good program. It was taken from America, right? And then Cool Mind happened, kind of similar but different. So he was in there. And Mary Ellen McCann, who later became the coordinator of the Ballymun Youth Action Project, she was a therapist there. And part of the Rutland program was the family would go up, or they'd invite the family up. And I was, I think, the only one that went up at the time, because everyone had kind of not given up on him, but like they were just, fuck him, let him do his thing.
Yeah, people weren't as open or as ready for it back then.
No, but I kept contact to it, that kind of. So I went up and they had family day, and you go and you challenge the person. You say, this is how your drinking or behaviour affected me, you know, and that would help. 15, 20 years later, I ended up working in the Rutland, but that's another story. So I met Mary Ellen there. So I would have been considered, they call it a concerned person or the child of an alcoholic, so to speak. And they had a little group at that time as well. I'd have been about 18, 19 at that time. Come forward about 5 or 6 years. I don't know how Mary Ellen knew I was in Ballymun, but she heard. I had nothing to do with Yap at this stage. She was. And she made contact with me somehow. Someone had said, Jimmy is over there, or some connection was made. And she said, would you come over and do a little talk to some of the young kids about addiction, whatever. And I did that, and that was grand. And she kept in touch. And then what happened was they had teamwork schemes back then. This is 87,
like 86, it was like a FOSS thing, was it?
Like a FOSS kind of thing.
Yeah.
She says, listen, you get your dole and a couple of quid on top of it. Would you come and work on the project? There's 6 months there. I said, yeah, absolutely. I hadn't like a qualification to my name. And they had a kind of a natural flair for that. Worked for some people, didn't work for that type of thing. And then they got funding in, and a year job became available as a project worker.
That's very similar to how I got into youth work, because I done youth work as a CE scheme when I was about, I'm going to say I was volunteering at 16, and I got a CE scheme at 17, and 18 I went and done a certificate in youth work studies, which was like the first one. Fran McFay was delivering it in Whitehall College. It was a minute certificate, and then I was a youth worker.
Right.
And I was in, and I was being bleeding paid to do the job that I was just hanging out with me mates doing anyway, cycling, bringing groups cycling to Wicklow, or building a bleeding go-kart or something like that. It was just the stuff that I knew how to do.
And loved doing.
Oh, I love it. And I'm sure that's the same for you. All of a sudden,
Here I am, talking to people, hanging out.
There's a bit of funding. Ballymun, what year is this?
87, 86, 87.
So for me, 85, 86, 87 is where heroin is like a peak. You could buy heroin outside the police station here. There was 12, 13, 14-year-olds on heroin.
Yep, I remember well.
They would have set up YAP specifically. This is my memory of it, specifically to address that.
Yeah, it was in response to a couple of ODs at the time. A couple of young people overdosed, and I came into YAP just I think a year and a half or two after it was began, and they only had the granny flat and one of the other flats. Like you said, here I was now, and just like doing stuff. We were working a lot with young people at the time. What happened was some of the older lads and women who were using heroin, and I started to kind of drift in a bit, and I started to connect there a bit as well. Rather than the street work stuff, which is great, people were coming in and starting to form groups. I started to get interested more in the therapy part of it, that kind of thing. Seemed to have a flair for that. So somewhere between the jigs and the reels, Mary Ellen McCann had a connection in Minneapolis, Minnesota in America, which was the centre for addiction treatment. That's where the Rutland came from, basically.
Yeah.
So through her contacts, myself and Catherine got to go over to Minneapolis to do a 3-month internship in this fucking adolescent treatment centre, which is really like famous in America, do you know what I mean? In the Minnesota model, to train in that. And that was a powerful experience.
It was about 8 years after that, he sent me and a girl from Ballymun over to Manchester to do work about ecstasy and the effects of ecstasy, which was great. So I done my community addiction studies course in YAP, and they were great at that. You know what I mean? Educating you in the community about the stuff that was going on, and then funding you to go off and do other stuff and find out what's the leading expertise in this in the world.
So, Jimmy, just one question also. Do you know when people come to see you, would you be sort of interviewing them, their life stories kind of thing, or would they just be pouring their hearts out to you? What's the story there?
To say, well, once
are they actually coming like asking for help kind of stuff like?
Yeah, well, if they were coming to YAP and they were identifying there was a problem either with their own addiction or with someone in their family who had an addiction, a parent, and they might ask for, could I see Jimmy? And you'd have a room like this where people would come in.
Who they felt comfortable talking with.
Yeah, and they'd come in and you'd have like a counselling session. In other rooms, you might have more of a kind of a drop-in, a casual, where younger people would just have a snoop around, like a youth setup, that type of setting, which was great. But then some people got a bit more specific. They wanted a bit more. And I found I was more interested in that end of it. So people were coming looking. I talked to you, I used to have long hair. Remember? Talk to your man with the long hair. Your man Jimmy, that hippie fella. He's in a group there. I began to run a group. It was a powerful group. It was a brilliant, brilliant group that I facilitated.
What age were they when they were there? Because you said older guys came in. So I'm just wondering what...
I'd say early to mid-20s.
Early 20s, 21, 22 to 25, which when I think of lads who were in the 80s who were in addiction, sometimes you think, these are lads in their... It's like the old image of a wino, you know what I mean? But these lads were like... I knew lads who were like 14, 15 to 18, and they were like 3 years in addiction in heroin. It's mad when you think about that. If a 14-year-old came into me now and said, I'm addicted to heroin 2 years, it would just blow your fucking mind away,
But it was like that in the 80s.
It was like that in the 80s.
Yeah, for sure.
So for these people that need help, Jimmy, say, coming to you and coming to the... What's YAP? What was YAP?
It's called the Youth Action Project was the name of it, even though I work with families and older people as well.
Was this a free service that was provided for the people that needed help?
Yeah, it was a community-based project.
Very good.
Set up for the community by people from the community.
And how often would they have to come back, basically?
It varied with different people, Martin. Like the place would be open every day, so they might have an appointment system if people wanted to specifically. So Martin wants to come and talk to Jimmy, for example. Martin says, Jimmy, can I, come in such and such a day at this time. There'll be space there for you. Or Martin might wander in, just sit and have a cup of tea and chat to someone else casually.
Right.
So it was that type of setup. It had a formal piece and it had quite an informal piece as well. Kind of a drop-in
Did you ever have any successful stories where someone would come back to you and say, like, they're a better person now, or they're different, or...
Over the years, thankfully, yeah. But
Have,
that keeps you in the work when you hear that. Sometimes people will say that, God, that was great and you were part of that journey.
More proud of your job, like, sort of.
Kind of, yeah.
Very good.
I'm sure there are people that don't say that as well, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's nice to know that anyone that say that there was perfection in the end, if you like.
Yeah.
You know?
It's
That the
it's
people
nice
that
to
were
hear
coming
that.
looking for help, that they sort of got out of that circle kind of, and they feel better about themselves in the end, like.
Yeah, particularly, I mean, if it's alcohol and drugs, if someone gets clean or sober, it's
Yes.
quite tangible. You can see or feel that. And if you're a little bit a part of that process, that's nice because you can actually see that. That's a
So
tangible
we
change.
call that
So you're
now.
basically, you're happy that you're sort of on that journey with them,
Yeah.
but you're on the other side of it, kind of like.
Yeah.
Very good.
And you're rooting for them, you're hoping they stay in that, you know?
Brilliant, very
So
good.
we call that now recovery, or the recovery journey.
Yeah.
And we just came out of Recovery Month, and I
That's
just
right.
talked last week about the recovery cycle and so on. And in this community, those success stories are more common than they used to be, I feel. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? There's more people staying on the wagon than not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just by talking about it and having chats about it. And as you said, maybe in the 70s when you were asked to go along to see your dad and you were one of the family who went along. Now I feel that there's more people of the family going along and going, you know what, he's not such a fucker or anyway. You know what
There's
I mean?
more understanding, it's less
Yeah,
taboo. But, you know, it's almost in a weird way. I mean, and Ballymun has great recovery. Ballymun always had, I know I'm a bit biased, but I think Ballymun was ahead of the posse with a lot of stuff. And I think and even the recovery month, there even being a small part of it there recently, it's fucking brilliant, you know. But it's almost trendy to be in recovery now. It's quite accepted. A lot of the shame has gone, as you said, and families are getting more education and understanding about it, you know. Martins, where it used to be hidden away a bit, now it's kind of held up.
Definitely the shame is gone because they're projecting the recovery ribbon on the side of the civic building in the middle of Ballymun for the whole month. So it's no longer hidden under the carpet or in the corners or in the shadows. It's out front and centre. It's like Recovery Month is like Pride.
Yeah.
It's out. We're out. We're out of the closet. We can be who we are, and we don't have to be afraid of it or ashamed of it or hide it or not talk about it or suicide because of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's that kind of going joke now that, like, you say to someone, why don't you, come into recovery? Or would you go to a meeting and that? And people kind of go, you fucking joking me. Someone might see me there. They're embarrassed about getting recovery, right?
Yeah.
But they're not embarrassed about being strung out to bits with
That's
everybody
right.
watching. So do you know that kind of
Yeah,
bad
we
one,
said
you
that here
know?
before, didn't we? That's
Yeah,
the thing.
I think I heard you guys talk about
I
that.
know.
Yeah.
I know a girl she's in that space where she has got to the rock bottom and she's just back from a recovery. She's away for 2 weeks, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to her the other day, and she was going, "I've joined the recovery choir. I'm doing the recovery walk. I'm actually thinking about going on the recovery cycle. You know, so it's not just I'm going to me meeting and that's it. There's these other
There's
things.
a whole network.
Oh, it's stunning. It's beautiful. And I don't know that wasn't there 20 years ago.
I just had a funny image. What does a recovery walk look like? Do you walk? You walk with pride. But you mentioned suicide there. I'm laughing. Suicide. It's a horrendous experience. But even to be able to talk about it, another way we used to say, and people still do, we use these euphemisms like, make sure he doesn't do something stupid. Follow him up the stairs, that type of stuff.
taking all the spoons again.
You make sure you don't do something stupid. Don't do something. You promise me you won't do something
We can do these
stupid.
voices for an hour.
Right? But think of what we're calling something stupid. Someone may be attempting to take how serious. So to be able to say that, Martin, to be able to use the language, say, Martin, I'm worried that you're going to kill yourself.
Yes.
Rather than kind of go, now, Martin, don't you be doing something stupid now.
Yes.
We're talking riddles, but that's changing a good bit. That kind
So
of
we
way.
had Jeff
Great.
O'Toole on here, and
I heard that was
he's part
brilliant.
of a project where it's about being confident to ask the person, are you suicidal? Are you feeling suicidal? Are you planning your own suicide?
Being
And
really
saying
clear.
those words,
Yeah.
and not being ashamed or fearful or thinking if they say yes, I'm fucked or I better run 100 miles.
Yeah.
About being able to sit in that and go, listen, I love you. I'm concerned about you. Are you suicidal today? Are you thinking about killing yourself today? That's the confidence to do that. It took time, but it's there now.
Almost like, when you meet someone that's had a bereavement and people are offering, because you don't want to, you're afraid to say, it's okay to say, "Gee, I'm sorry for your loss. I know it sounds corny, but I'm sorry I heard that, sometimes we won't say it.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to, we think we're going to make the other person uncomfortable, where it's a relief for the other person. Thanks for saying it. We think if we say to someone, listen, are you thinking of taking your own life? don't say that to them. You put that idea into their head. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't going to do it beforehand, kind of thing. It's
don't say
okay.
the word suicide, because that will force them.
They're going to do it then.
That'll force their hand.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know you're speaking right or wrong in them lines.
I think intention's important.
Depending how people takes it, like, isn't it?
That's what I mean, man. The intention. I think, the whole thing about even being politically correct, sometimes it's hard to find the right words, but I think if your energy's good, if you mean well, generally speaking, people won't mind. They'll sense, even if you say the wrong thing, whatever that is, you mean well. You're a bit awkward, you stumble into it, but as you said, I'm saying this because I love you.
It depends on what kind of understanding people take to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose you can always, and this is the therapist in me, you can check that out.
Probably depends how long you know them, or if you know them, or there's a lot of circumstances when it comes to speaking to people, isn't there?
Of course there is.
So that's why I was saying to you, it's about the relationship. It's about the relationship you have with yourself, the relationship you have with them and their emotions. If you've no relationship with yourself and you can't connect with them on an emotional level, you're probably not going to have that vibe with them. But if you know who you are and you're comfortable and you're all right and you can sense what they're thinking or feeling, you've got a better stab at it to go, listen, you look like your head's fucking wrecked. Do you want to blade and chat about it for 2 minutes?
For example, I always joke with, I'm probably the king of disclaimers in therapy, right? It's where I might want to challenge something about someone, but I'll go out of my way to kind of go, Martin, now look, I'm probably fucking wrong about this. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably all over the place. But is there any chance you might blah, 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 blah? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I've already cushioned it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Martin can kind of go, oh, you got that wrong, but you're not fair,
Yeah, your brother knows.
kind of thing. So lots of
He does it all the
disclaimers.
time. Martin does it all the time. He says,
He does
I'm going
actually.
to say something here.
He does
now,
actually.
this is from my perspective. It's not about other people. It's not about, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of, he minds the thing around the corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he knows for certain people, when they hear this, it's going to be a difficult thing to hear.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of mind it into their ear,
Yeah, it depends on what the conversation is, or what you're actually, let's say, talking about, the topic.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can explain yourself in the best way possible. That doesn't mean somebody else is not going to take offense to it. Do you know what I mean? So you're trying to, let's say you're trying to be polite as possible, but you're also trying to cover your own back at the same time. Because you don't want to be, for me anyway, you don't want to be stepping into the deep water, like, and realising I've just said something here I shouldn't have said, kind of thing.
Whoops.
No, we're all not, I know we're all not perfect, like, we can't get every word right. I understand that also.
I suppose, Martin, that's where communication's important,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is. Communication is good as long as the other person, whether they understand or not, as long as they try to understand.
Yeah.
If they don't try to understand and they don't want to hear what you have to say, it could be a different turn.
But we can always check out. I can always say, Martin, I'm after saying something to you there. Did you hear? I said blah, blah. What did you hear? I think I'm after getting that wrong. To be okay with being wrong.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being...
But as you said, it
nothing-
depends on the conversation and who you're talking to.
What does your man say? Everybody has the right to go wrong.
Yeah. Everyone's the right to go
And
wrong.
as part of your training, what I hear you saying is this, all that type
All
of stuff.
that
That's
stuff.
that's your bread and butter. But then also there's is there a clinical assessment part of it as well, or a psychological assessment, or
So the
maybe, maybe what I'm trying to ask is, what is a psychotherapist?
Okay. It's distinguished from counselling sometimes. You get a bit snobby, you're a psychotherapist, but they are a little bit different.
Because you use the word counselling.
Yeah. They're kind of one and the same thing in many ways. But if there is a difference, a psychotherapist, the training's a bit longer and you go a bit deeper, right? To break the words down, because I'm really interested in words, I think it's from Greek. Psyche is mind or spirit, soul. And therapist is therapist to heal. So to heal the soul is what it's really
Has a spiritual vibe off it?
Absolutely, which is right up my street as well, because that's where I think real healing happens, whether we're religious, spiritual or not. It's that area, the mystery of the soul and all, because you can have all the psychological skills you like, and that's great, but there's something about human beings, man, and I'm sure you agree with this because I've heard you talking. There's another dimension, isn't there? That just ordinary psychotherapy on its own doesn't get.
You can have all the rational scientific stuff, but there's the human dynamic.
Yeah, that mystery. I love the mystery of that. Like every person you meet. Like I've been doing this years, but not for once do I kind of go, oh, here's Martin, or here's Dean. Now I know what they're like, is they're blah blah blah. Yeah, there's a bit of an assessment you do. You get a suss on things, and you get used to it. But everybody, and I know it sounds a bit corny, is unique, because sometimes I think Freud said it. I'm not a big fan of Freud. He said, once you're presented with the mystery of another human being, throw all your books and everything away, because it's a whole different ball game. You're presented with a human being.
One thing that blows my mind is that we're all loads of similarities.
For sure.
But none of us ever, as far as back as you could go or as far forward as you go in human time, none of us are the same.
No.
We're all individually beautiful. Every single person that will ever be or ever was.
Fingerprints, eye colour.
My God, that blows my bleeding heart open.
Amazing,
I just love people that I just say, oh my God, it's so interesting then.
Yeah. So have you ever got anyone in there, Jimmy, that'd be, say, for instance, like, to come and want to talk to you, basically, yeah? About their problems, yeah? Mm-hmm. Right. Have you ever got that person where you'd say, excuse me.
Say,
yeah. Where you'd want them to come back to you again to sort of finish off that chat, or to check how they're doing, or is there any progress there, or like that kind of stuff?
Great question, Martin. I mean, in a way, if someone's coming for therapy, say, for example, you come and we make a contract or an agreement, the chances are you're going to come back.
Right. Yeah. But what I'm saying is there... Have you ever got these individuals where you sort of feel like a little bit worried about them, and you sort of try to convince them to come back, so that you feel you can give them more help? Like,
yeah, I know what you mean. Absolutely, yeah. You just get that gut feel, like, God, I hope they come back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously, we can't make them, because it's the
naturally, yeah, of course.
But you're absolutely right. Sometimes you get.
Would there be contacts there to reach out to them again for the second time, kind of thing, like?
I might with some people, it depends. Some people don't want you to do that. They just want to make their appointment.
Yes.
Have their appointment. They come and they go off, and they come back the following week or in 2 weeks' time and they have their appointment. It would piss them off if you contacted them. But some people you get a bit of a vibe about and might just drop in a text. So look forward to seeing you again next week or something. That type of thing.
Very good, yes.
It varies, Martin, with different people.
And sometimes it can be court enforced. You need to go and see this dude and get an assessment, and you need to come back here in a couple of months' time, or, it's going to affect your case.
That's a whole different ball game.
That's a whole different ball game. Yeah. But generally, people who turn up want to be there. It's voluntary participation almost. Yeah. And that if there is somebody where there's just red lights going off and flashing lights going off, you would consult other people, maybe other colleagues or other people that's working with them, going, listen, John there, he's ready to bleed and kill himself, and I said it to him and he ran out the room. So would that be a scenario?
That could happen. Now for me, we're talking about recovery a lot, and because I got a background in addiction and then went on to develop other types of therapy, a lot of the people that would end up coming to me, if they're recovery, they're not coming in the beginning to try get off something. That's all done. By the time they get to me, they're coming to me or someone like me because there's a lot of pain now that they're off of it. Feelings are starting to come. Maybe there's some trauma from the past they want to work with.
So they might have gone through
Rutland or
the rock bottom, done the program in the Rutland,
wherever,
come out, realise it's the emotions now. It's all that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. In order to mind myself and be kind to myself, I'm going to go
talk to someone
and meet somebody, meet Jimmy.
So what is the main things you deal with, Jimmy? Is it like is it people with alcohol problems, drug problems, people on the street?
Not necessarily. I have worked in homelessness for years back in the day, but now it's more people, as Dean's just describing. If they're coming from addiction, alcohol or drugs, they've already gone to AA or NA. They've gone to Yap or Star or somewhere or Coolmine or Rutland. They've sorted that bit out, Martin.
Right.
And there may be a year. They could even be a year or 2 years off everything, 3 years, and they're thinking, I want to work on that issue now about my family or about that bit of abuse that I've been avoiding all my life. I'm ready to talk about that now. I'm going to go talk to someone. Be that type of thing.
Kind of stuff, yeah.
It's not so much the crisis stuff anymore. I've worked with crisis intervention as well.
Very good.
People are coming in for the long haul now. So if we're doing trauma work, they often say trauma work's a minimum of 2 years, at least 2 years. And trauma can be usually abuse, poverty in childhood, that type of stuff, how that's impacting someone now. So I tend to work a lot with abuse, sexual abuse, all types of abuse.
Did you ever get to interview, Jimmy, people who are on drugs or coming down for drugs, or people who alcoholics.
I did a lot of the time over the years, at different times, and there's all different parts of that because that's some early recovery, detox phase. More and more now, and probably more people tend to come to me when they're finished with all that and they want to work on some of the
But
other
they
issues.
would still be, depending on their own definition, they'd still be alcoholic.
100%
You know
just in
what I mean?
recovery, yeah.
Still in recovery.
Yeah.
They're just not in that bit of recovery where it's the Rutland Centre. So the Rutland Centre would be like a recovery
Treatment centre.
a treatment centre where you go for treatment, you go for a detox, you're in a group, you're there for a number of weeks. So you would have known Darren Nolan went to the Rutland Centre.
Yeah.
Yeah. He went through the treatment programme.
All right.
You know what I mean? So he would have been in the Rutland for a number of weeks. So that's what that is. And then what Jimmy gets then is when people have gone through that process for about 6 or 12 weeks or whatever it is, somebody will refer him to Jimmy to talk about all the stuff in behind the addiction and the alcohol, all the trauma and the pain, and probably the stuff that led him into addiction. So not necessarily, sometimes we think the drug is the bad thing, but I heard someone say the other day, it's not the drug, it's the cage. It's all of the other stuff that's wrapped around it. Your memories, your trauma, the abuse, the pain, all that type of stuff. The cage that we have built up.
Yeah, the drugs
the
and the
community
drink.
that you live in.
Drugs and the drink become the answer,
Oh, love that one.
right? They're the answer. Not the right answer, but they're the answer.
The think is the answer, basically.
yeah, but that's, rather than the problem, it's the answer to a problem.
Yes,
You know?
yes.
But I think two things happen, right? Can get a bit tricky. One is when someone becomes alcoholic or addict, they're interlinked as far as I'm concerned, where they're in a pattern where they're using chemicals regularly and it's causing this harmful consequences, and they continue using in spite of the harmful consequences, and they're hurting people they love, but they're feeling conflictual about that. If someone's in that process, right, there's the underlying stuff that you were just describing, what's underneath that, the pain, the trauma, and then there's the stuff that addiction creates its own mindset as well. So you kind of got to deal with two things that are interlinked, like on a train track, but connected. So why I say that is there's some brilliant therapists who don't understand addiction, right? And they'll get someone who's had addiction or is in addiction, and they'll try and focus on the trauma without addressing the addiction.
Yeah, my training has told me if we sort the trauma out, the other stuff will clear up. But actually, there's the drinking thinking, the stinking thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why we often say addiction is primary. Like it's the primary issue, right? That's the thing that's there. That's the one, and there's all the stinking thing. And now they're interlinked. They're not separate. Once you get a bit of that stabilized, someone gets a bit of clarity, they get a bit of sobriety under their belt or recovery under the belt. Then, and they say wait for about 2 years, they can start like chipping away at the other stuff.
So were you ever drinking yourself, Jimmy? No.
I did, yeah. When I was that younger period, I did.
Yeah.
So I stopped at 18. I
So
was
you're
very,
about
very.
So you're about 10 years off it now, yeah.
I look 40, don't I?
In dog years, about 10 bleeding years.
Well, I was very lucky. There's a thing in you'll hear it in recovery, in the recovery movement, called attraction rather than promotion, right? So my dad was in and out of AA. He always got periods of sobriety for 2 or 3 years. But some of the people that were around him were younger. So I was 18, they were in their mid-late 20s. And I was attracted to their lifestyle. So it wasn't even like, that's it, I finished drinking and fucking around with couples. It was like, I really like what they're doing. And they all had guitars and they were all singing like Pink Floyd and Bowie and da-da-da-da. And they weren't drinking or drugging.
Or sober, were they?
And they had this open communication. And it was really cool. So I was really attracted to that. So that's what.
So the people, the places and the things, but just not the alcohol.
Yeah.
But they
lovely.
were enjoying life in a better way, basically. Yeah. It proved they didn't take alcohol to actually enjoy themselves.
And not one of them said to me, you need to stop what you're doing. They used to take the piss out of me a bit, They were really loving. But that's very interesting. Attraction does it. You see something you want. Not one of them said to me, you need to stop what you're doing. That's crazy what you're doing, They'd laugh at me and say, jeez, you can't drink, you're always getting sick. And what's that cough bottle shit you're drinking, Here, let's look after you, blah, blah, blah. They kind of knew I was getting attracted to what they were doing. And it just fell away, And they, one of them took me to an AA meeting. I was 18. Now, that's not young these days to go to AA. It was back in 1980. They're all looking at me going, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah, because it was the wino kind of stereotype or archetype. You know what I mean?
You're 3%ers.
Yeah.
We call them. Yeah, yeah.
What do you mean? Say that again. 3%.
3% is 3% of all alcoholics are street drinkers, wine drinker. You know, the old wino, black coat with the old.
So it's very similar to the homeless thing. You know, 3% of homeless people are the street sleepers. Exactly. Most homeless people are women with kids in hostels or hotels. But the perception, the myth is that it's the wino, that it's the drinker, that it's the guy in Abbey Street in a corner.
I remember I worked in the Simon back in 1980. I was a volunteer in Simon community. It was very different, that hostel. And they're all meth drinkers and it was all very different then, you know what I mean? The heroin thing hadn't really hit then. It was all alcohol, cider, methylated spirits, surgical spirits. Johnny Jump Up, they used to call it. There was a couple of travellers there, but most of the people in the sign were settled. Maggie Ward, the famous Maggie Ward.
Yes.
She was a great... she's long dead now. This is back in 1980. She'd have been about 50 or 60, so she's well gone, but she was a fantastic woman. The Wards would hang around, but most of the people there were so-called settled people. You know?
Was she a traveller woman?
Yeah.
Where was she?
In the Simon community.
Oh, right, okay.
It was only... Travellers didn't always stay in the Simon community. They'd knock in and out back in the day. You know, the Simon was very different then than it is now. It was just this mad hostel back in the day, right? That's where I heard about. I was talking to Martin about Thomas McCann. I heard about Thomas McCann back then, right? Someone said to me, "Have you met the McCanns?" The McCanns are fucking brilliant. And they just had this, everyone's, you know, so the McCanns back in the day, and I hope Thomas wouldn't mind me saying this, they were up in Baggot Street and they had their couple of trailers up there in Baggot Street, right?
Right.
The lane way off Baggot Street. They were like, they took in every homeless person going. They were like an unofficial strays and waifs would end up with the McCanns.
They were the Mother Teresa of Baggot Street, weren't they?
They weren't saying that out loud, but they just were, people liked them and they were very friendly. They looked after people, you know.
Very good.
So they had a great reputation. So I heard about Thomas long before I met him. Then I met him somewhere along the way. And he was just cool looking guy. He had long hair, which I don't know, not many travellers had long hair at the time, but he had.
Right.
Yeah, this was about 1981. And he had an earring and he was just a real cool guy. And we just clicked. And over the years, we just kept bumping into each other. And
All right.
Yeah.
What was the second name?
McCann.
Oh, the fellow I'm talking about is Thomas McCarthy.
Oh, right, McCarthy.
He's a traveller activist singer.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I got that
From
mixed up.
Wexford, is it?
Yeah. I think he's over in the UK at the moment. But I met him during the summer. He was singing on a canal boat down on the Royal Canal.
Oh, right. Well, that was Thomas McCann be laughing. I'll actually, Thomas will be on my podcast hopefully in a couple of weeks with me.
So you have a podcast as well?
I do.
And you do this?
I do this.
And you're sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in. Mm-hmm. You're asking the questions, getting the guests, producing possibly as well.
Well, you were very kindly showing me, you gave me your time earlier on to show me a bit about producing.
How are you finding the podcast experience?
The technical bit I find a bit stressful.
Yeah.
I'm really way behind on that.
I was showing Jimmy how to use the software to do editing and all that type of stuff, and it was like teaching a child how to crawl. He was like just at the start.
Yeah.
But if you listen to his podcast, it's done really, really nice.
Yeah, because I have other people to help me do that.
So there's a gap that he needs to, fill in between his technical experience, but he's great at the other end.
I hope so.
No, it's great.
I get a great enjoyment out of it. I get a great buzz out of it. I really love, like you were saying, Martin, earlier on, meeting people. I like the conversations.
Yeah, of course.
I like a bit of fun. I like
and
the banter.
It's probably helping people as well.
Well, I hope so. It helps me. I hope it. Yeah, people have said
it. Do you get feedback from it?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and they keep it going. It's good,
Yeah.
So I do a lot about trauma and addiction, stuff we're talking about now, and narcissism. I do quite a lot about, and abusive relationships, toxicity. Interview different people. I might have you on the podcast, Martin. Would you come on yourself?
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Yes.
Yeah. Because I've had this fella already. So
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind me, how many of your family and friends in the travelling community or elsewhere are listening to the podcast or are talking to you about it?
Basically, almost every one of them are listening to it.
Are they? And what's the feedback? What are they saying?
Good feedback, but I can't say much about Dean.
Martin loves it out.
You love Dean.
I'm only joking.
I think he actually does love me.
I think you do.
I'm only joking.
I've noticed because
you get good feedback.
He'll never say it on this stuff.
He won't say it on air, and I notice you kind of get into a bit of banter and gets a bit edgy, and that's fine. But I'm thinking, this guy is mad about Dean.
Like I said, I like winding Dean up.
Yeah.
And
but
it works
that's
every
his
time.
way of expressing his.
That's your way of
Yeah,
saying
I love winding them up. It works
the
every
first
time.
two
yeah.
words there. I love.
I love.
Good.
That's your way to live. Can I ask you a completely different question,
Just
Martin?
I have a
You know the
wife
way-
and 9 kids as well, 14 grandkids and all that.
Lovely. You know the way
I have the full package.
your podcast is called Traveller Countryman, and I understand the countryman. I've heard that travelling people refer to settled people as countrymen, and aren't we also referred to as buffers? Am I right in the camp?
Buffers?
Yeah. Is that an old-fashioned term?
I think that's an old-fashioned word if
you don't hear it anymore?
the travelling man and the countryman was fighting.
Because I heard that years
They
ago.
calling names. I heard it myself years ago.
Yeah, it's like Culty and Buffer, is
I
it?
heard it myself
Well,
years ago.
that traveller, I was trying to travel, he says, yeah, you're a buffer. I said, what do you mean I'm a buffer? He says, settled person.
Probably just a word that carried on through the generations.
Right.
And I mightn't have a clue what the word even means.
Right. I
Ask
thought it was
me what it
part
means,
of
I
the
haven't
cant
got
or
a
the
clue.
gammon, no? Is that
I don't know. I don't think it was anything to do.
countryman's more of the term?
I
isn't it?
don't think it was anything to do with Kant. No.
Martin told me that there'd be certain words that would be just used in different regions, and other travellers wouldn't use those words.
Yeah, I've heard
know?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe one of them.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's the same way with there is travellers like Dean said there where like different travellers use different words, but maybe with the same meanings, if that makes any sense. But I find a lot of that in the coming from the settled community also, where how would I say it? Yeah, like I would have went to a lot of parts of Dublin now and outside it, say buying and selling out cars and stuff like that, and I would find that getting to chatting people and talking to people, that in their conversations, I'd find certain words that sort of represented an other word from another part of Dublin, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'd find the same kind of meanings. In other words, if you were explaining a story to me, yeah, obviously you're going to explain it your way. The other person might have the same story to tell, but explain it in his way, from different sides. That's why I'm saying about travellers using different words but referring to the same things. Like for instance, if you're down around Wexford now,
Right.
you have a lot of Connors down that side of the world, and you could be having a chat with them, and they might bring up certain words, and I know exactly what they mean. But if I was explaining that same story,
You'd use a different
from
word.
up around Dublin, I'd explain that story to another person, but I'd use different words, but I know it was all meant the same thing.
Yeah.
I know it is a hard one to explain.
No, it's like a dialect near
It's
an accent.
something to do with you've heard people using slang, that kind of stuff. Well, everybody has different slang words. We get a lot of that around Dublin, we know that for sure.
Yeah.
Where people have all different slang words, but sort of can mean the same thing.
I remember even going back to the 70s, settled people using lots of the cant, the beer and all that stuff. They were picking. Then it was coming into the light. Here's the shades. They were using all that stuff.
Yeah, well, obviously, the shades is the
guards.
Is the guards.
Yeah.
The souble would be the man, basically.
Yeah.
The lackeen would be
Lackeen,
a
the
woman.
woman.
The fiend would be a man.
Man, yeah.
Now, you have the souble and the fiend, as I said. Different people use them different words, but it means the one thing.
Ah, okay.
A lackeen, a bure.
It's an older woman, maybe?
Two different,
Same
different cultures of travellers would use them, but it mean the same thing. For instance, if I said bure, and your man from Wexford said lackeen,
Same thing.
it still means, it's still referring to the one thing, it's a woman, basically. But you have lots of different types of words in that there. The older people would use a lot more cant
Okay.
than the newer ones today. The shades, that be still used.
Yeah.
The Garda, basically.
Yeah.
It's a word that's more or less used every single day.
Martin, I have a question for you. It's not necessarily about that. It's okay if I ask you?
Yeah, of course.
It's just back to Thomas. Thomas, you may or may not know, he began, founded, created, and is the manager of the Traveller Counselling Service, which runs out of the parish of the Travellers down in Pittsburgh.
Right, yeah.
And it was kind of a bold move. As much as doing this podcast is like a brave move, and fair play to you for doing it, starting it, coming on, because I know you were resisting it for a while.
Yeah, loads of times.
So Thomas got the idea. Thomas is trained as a psychotherapist also. He's a very educated guy. And he got this idea about, I'd like to start up a therapy service for travellers to come to, because they wouldn't normally do it.
That's right, yeah.
And it took but it's kind of thriving now. People are coming. I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on travellers going to, say, the likes of what I'm talking about, what we're talking about here.
My thoughts on travellers, and I'm not speaking again for every traveller, because, as I said, everybody has their own ways of expressing themselves, like, you know. My thoughts about travellers going to AA meetings or like psychotherapist meetings or therapy, they're very private about these things in their lives, for starters. They would find it, I think, very, very hard to talk to another traveller about their problems. Obviously, some travellers have to rely on somebody or another. There's always someone there you can talk to, like, you know what I mean? No matter what. But I do know travellers in particular very shy about, let's say, explaining their life stories or
their problems or whatever.
Their problems more than life story, and about who they talk to.
Right.
I'd imagine if a traveller did have let's say, a situation in their lives or a problem in their life that they'd like to talk to somebody about, I think they'd be more inclined to talk to a settled person quicker than a traveller. And also, like, the reference would be made to say, look, keep this strictly private.
Of course.
In other words, like, you're working in one office and there's a traveller working in another office. There's an almost guarantee that he's going to say to you, look, this goes no further, like, in other words, it doesn't go into the ears of other travellers.
Of course.
Because they think a lot about shame on themselves. They shouldn't be, but they feel, they'd feel if other travellers knew their business, kind of thing. It's an embarrassment to them.
Humiliating or
but
embarrassing.
It shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be, no.
It shouldn't be an embarrassment. That's a line or a barrier that sort of would take, let's say, a bit of power to break, if you like.
Quite a lot of courage as well.
And at the same time, I do think if a person wants to talk to somebody, I think they should be free to speak to the person that they feel comfortable with. And if that's not a traveller, and it means speaking to a settled person in a profession, if you know what I mean, I think they'd be well entitled to this.
Well, the good thing about the Traveller Counselling Service, just for argument's sake, Martin brings the Traveller Counselling Service. Yeah, I want to talk to someone. You'd have the option of talking to a traveller, because there's trained therapists who are travellers now.
Don't get me wrong, there's probably, there could be 100 travellers out there that would feel comfortable talking to another traveller also.
Yeah.
It's probably, I don't know, is it the same way?
What I'm saying is, Martin, you'd have the choice.
Yeah, but the choice would be great for anyone that would need to talk to somebody.
And there are travellers who are trained as therapists now, which is brilliant.
Very good. Brilliant.
So there's travellers who are trained that counsel travellers. There's travellers who are trained that counsel settled people.
Yeah,
there's settled people that counsel travellers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the options are there. What Martin is kind of saying is there's a bit of suspicion between travellers as well.
Sure,
you don't trust each other a lot.
It's probably not more about not trusting each other.
Okay.
It's probably being about shy and being ashamed to express their feelings to people that they know. I think that's where the problem would be, more than not trusting the person.
Would they be embarrassed?
Sort of, yeah.
Would they be embarrassed if somebody else knew their business?
That kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and that for me is a little bit about trust. I don't.
It is, in a sense.
A fear of judgment, maybe.
If I put my stuff out here, it's going to go everywhere, and all the travellers are going to know it, and it's going to come back on me.
The insecurity in themselves won't allow them to take that chance.
Yeah, exactly. That's the chance.
What I mean?
And we were talking about that a few weeks ago when my ma said, you were the one traveller here who's starting to take the chance and put your neck above the line. You know what I mean? And take a few darts.
Yeah. If you were talking to somebody, and again, as I said earlier on, it's not that you don't fully trust that person. You probably in the back of your mind you're thinking, look, if I tell them something here, it might be important to me, but it might sound silly to them. And if they let it slip to somebody else, then I'm feeling ashamed. It mightn't be something serious. It could be something silly again or stupid.
But important to that person.
It might be important to that person themselves, yes. Yeah. And they're thinking, look, if that person lets it slip. But that's why I back again to where I was saying about the traveller. The chances are, I'm not speaking again for every traveller, I have to make that clear also. The chances are that they'd feel more comfortable talking to a settled person in their profession than a traveller. But then again, I don't know a big lot about that. I'm guessing that maybe there is travellers who also go through the traveller That's psychotherapist, is it?
Yeah, goes both ways. Yeah.
Yes, and maybe feel comfortable chatting to that person also,
Definitely,
which is a good feeling to have. It's a good. It's a good. It's a sense of freedom knowing that you can actually talk to another traveller and say, if you want, tell him whatever little worries or problems that you have. So it's nice to know that you have that person to talk to.
I think that day is coming where travellers feel comfortable talking to other professional travellers, and that thing about the shyness or these might talk to other travellers. I think that that day is coming.
Back again to the one story, really. Mm-hmm. Who are we comfortable talking to? You might not feel comfortable. One traveller might not feel comfortable talking to another traveller and telling his life story. So if there's a settled person, as again, in that profession, whatever the profession might be, you might just be more comfortable talking to that person and also you might be more inclined to keep it confidential, if you like. It's a hard one to explain, I know that.
And so what I was going to say is built into Jimmy's work is a confidential agreement between Jimmy and the person.
Yeah, but I'm sure
between any counsellor, any
I'm
therapist.
Sure it's built into the traveller. Say that you're talking about the psychotherapist also, who is a traveller.
They'd have the same principles.
I'm sure
ethics.
they're bound to the same rules.
Exactly.
If you like.
Yeah,
and that's understandable. But the barrier is within ourselves.
Yeah,
we're
it's
not
changing
looking,
though, isn't it?
We're not looking at that person on the chair over there and saying he's a psychotherapist, he's a traveller, but I can't trust him. We're not saying that. We're holding it inside because it's ourselves that's actually locking up and not allowing ourselves to speak to that person.
Yeah, it's not a judgment
on
them. So
the person on them, we're not judging that person. We're not saying that they're the problem. Ourselves are the problem.
Your own fears.
Yeah, that we just can't release that tension that holds us down, basically, if you like, and allows us to speak to who we want to speak to, and also we're actually disallowing ourselves to speak to the other traveller person, which might be I'm not saying
best option
it might
in the
be
world.
the best option, but we're not allowing ourselves to take that option.
Right, but that's changing, Martin, isn't it?
You know now, sure, of course, it's good if it changes. It's brilliant if it changes.
And having these conversations helps.
And again, it probably boils back down to courage also.
Huge.
Courage, taking that step and say, look, hold it. I'm comfortable talking to that guy there. And I'm going to have a chat with him. It might be the best thing I ever do in my life.
Yeah.
As Jimmy was saying, and as he was asking there, who listens to this in your family, in your community? And if they listen to her, what are they hearing? Are they hearing, wow, Martin is doing great stuff there?
Probably hearing this easy talking that they're sick to listen to.
Yeah, but don't put yourself
just
down, Martin, because I'm saying, are they saying...
What are they really saying?
Martin is...
I'm being sarcastic.
I know.
I told you, but you didn't.
I know. What are your family really saying?
Important.
And your friends?
They're saying it's very, very good. It's good to be open about and talking about certain things. And not to tell me that don't get carried away, all right, but...
don't lose run yourself,
and
don't
none
get
of them have
famous.
said to you, don't do it, have they?
No, actually, there's anyone that I've been talking about this, now, bear in mind, I would never bring this conversation up. I'm not going around looking for the sugar lumps, like, in this. So anyone that brought up to me, and a lot of them have brought up to me and said, look, it's a great, and you do have great conversations, and they actually enjoy listening to it. And some of them have said they've listened to it twice or even 3 times.
That's amazing, isn't it?
So it is good, yeah. It's interesting that they want to hear.
A young guy that we know has said to us, what I used to do was at night I'd smoke a spliff. He said, now I listen to the podcast and it helps me chill out at night. He really enjoys listening to his culture being explained in words in a way that he never heard it explained before, you know?
Now, it's obvious to not, say, if I was talking particularly about travellers now on the podcast, as we do sometimes, we throw a little bit in there every now and again, it doesn't mean that every traveller listening to what I'm saying is going to agree 100% to it, like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But they do understand where I'm coming from. Sure. That's the most important thing, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the important things. Yeah. And I haven't been beaten up yet, so.
I see that. Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah, the travelers, the ones that are listening will have a great interest in it, without a doubt. Yeah. But then again, it's not just because I'm on the podcast, or not necessarily because Dean is on the podcast. It's probably down to yourself, like the guests that we can bring on at times also, which is very good. And then, on the other hand, I think people just like to listen to a story, no matter what.
They do, but the fact that you're a traveller yourself, Martin, it's like you're immediately your family and friends. That opens the door straight away.
Well,
Even
yeah.
if the conversation isn't about travel, it's like,
Yeah.
he's one of us.
They want to sort of hear what's
What's the
fella,
Stokes fella saying?
what's this fella saying about
Yeah,
us? We need to hear it.
I'm hearing a voice.
Let's correct
I'm
him.
hearing a voice on the radio or the TV or on a podcast that we just don't hear.
Yeah.
That voice isn't heard. It's like a North Dublin accent is not on the RTE unless it's there for comic.
Could you imagine 6 o'clock? Here's the news,
comic
right?
relief. Right, lads. So there's been 2 robberies. I done one of them myself, yeah.
Here's Marcella with the weather. It's going to be fucking lashing.
Here's a tractor. She's gorgeous. You're right.
Roll it there, Nikita.
I used to do that kind of drawly heroin Northside Dublin accent all the time. I got a bit of humour out of it, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. All right, lads. And then I think I just stopped doing it because I just thought, for me, it was like using the word junkie or something like that. You know what I mean?
Comes a bit of a stereotype.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
people
bit of
take offence from it, Dean. Yeah.
Yeah, people taking offence from it. Now I know why I done it and why I, got a bit of a laugh out of it. But
I mean, these people
Is
are
it right?
savages
Is it right
after all.
to?
animals.
Is it right to? Is it right to get a laugh of someone's downfall in life? No.
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying to myself. What
were
am
feeling
I
guilty about
punching down here for?
Yeah. But there is something about, I love black gallows humour as well, where we laugh at ourselves, whatever. Again, it's like we said earlier on, it's the energy behind it. The intention isn't to harm, There's something about that, isn't there? But at the same
100%.
time, there's a balance, isn't there,
Yeah. So I just wanted to go back to something there a second ago, which was, it's not the drug, it's the cage.
Go on, yeah, you were on that. Sorry.
And so I heard that the other day, a fella who does CBT was talking about it.
Cognitive behavioural
And he was talking
therapy.
about Rat Park, and he was saying that the rats in Rat Park, the Rat Park experiment, when they had all their needs met, they didn't go for the drip with the cocaine in it as much. 1 in 10 did, but 9 out of 10 didn't. Because the cage environment was good, they went for the water. But in the scenario in Rat Park, which was this experiment that happened, in that experiment, when they didn't have all their needs met and the cage, their environments, the conditions were shit, most of them went for the cocaine. If you get the cage right, they tend towards not taking the drug.
So would that be a bit like when I was describing at 18, meeting these people that were kind of like, they didn't drink or drug, they all played guitar, they had great communication. That was far more preferable than sitting around in Dorset
Yeah,
Street
it was
saying
lovely,
any
it
odds.
was nice and social, and you were having some of your needs met, and you felt valued, and you were listened to, and
was
you could
important.
express yourself and all that type of stuff. And
Felt safe.
you were being watered, and your belly was being rubbed, and you didn't need to put the bottle of bleeding cough medicine down your neck
No,
to
not at all.
feel value. Yeah.
This was soothing.
So what's the cage, Dean? I'm lost the cage.
The cage is kind of like, let's take Ballymun as a community, as an environment, as a place that you grow up. Or let's take St. Margaret's as a community.
Yes.
It's what happens in there. It's the way you communicate. It's the experiences. It's the pain. It's the trauma. It's the lack of running water. Or it's the amazing school that you go to. If those things are set up to address the needs of the people who live there, there's less likelihood that it would lead to addiction and trauma and pain. If you get them wrong, there's a higher likelihood. If the school is shy and the caravan has no insulation and the food is crap and people are calling you out all the time for being dirty, smelly travellers, the likelihood is the environment that you're in is shit, and that you're going to tend towards addiction, alcohol, all that type of stuff. Does that make sense?
You replicate that experience.
Yeah, it is. It makes sense if you take it on board. But if you don't listen to all this negativity or take it on board, what does it mean?
I'm not just talking about the verbal stuff. I'm talking about the conditions as well.
The atmosphere, the vibe.
Does that mean we have to turn to something that's no good for us?
No, it just means our needs aren't being met. So we go to somewhere where we can get some of our needs met, or we can drown out the pain.
But the reality is we're turning to a worse situation.
Yeah, we're probably trying to, as Jimmy was saying when he drank the Benylin,
It was cheaper.
it was he got this little place that he just snuck into and just hid in there. Little
What I was saying earlier on,
away from the cage, away from the conditions, away from the whatever.
Or even my own inner cage, my own fears and worries, whatever. It was going to be okay for 10 minutes.
I do think that if a person has something on their minds and it's affecting them or in any way, I think they should talk to somebody, no matter who it is, whether it be traveller, settled person, teacher, Garda, nurse, doctor, priest, brother, sister, friend, neighbour, anybody. I think they should reach out to somebody, no matter who it is.
Some other human being.
Even if they are shy about talking to psychotherapists, whether it be traveller or settled person, it's good. But if they are shy to talking to them, at least let them talk to somebody, no matter who it is.
So that's your career, is talking and listening. It starts with talking and listening, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because you're not sitting there in a room giving them medication going, take that, that's going to sort you out.
And more listening than talking, encouraging and listening, yeah.
And you said you have developed your own therapies.
Style.
Okay, is that what that is?
Yeah.
So what is that? What do you mean? You've developed your own style, your own way of doing it.
Just being myself. It's my own style. Like, there's lots of training, there's different techniques you can use, Gestalt therapy, CBT, bodywork therapy. There's all different types, psychoanalytic techniques, psychodynamic techniques. These are all just fancy words. What I'm developing now is my own way of doing that, right? Rather than it being just something you take out of the box and, yes, I'm going to try this CBT with you now. It's like, I'm going to do therapy Jimmy style, you do it Dean style. So it's about, if you go back to the core conditions, being authentic. I'm going to be myself with you. And I'm hoping that if I mirror that to you, you might then get the courage to be yourself. It's not that I have to share everything about myself.
So is that what is that one of the goals, is that you're trying to get the person who comes to you to be themselves?
Yeah. That's what I would have in my mind. Be and enjoy and like and celebrate and love and respect and not, take ownership of and be proud of.
If you're explaining things to certain people that come to you, for advice and whatever the reasons they come to you, and if you're explaining this in sort of, let's say, educated words, and if those people don't understand these words, how do you go about that?
Well, I tend to steer away from advice.
Say the CBT thing now. If you said that to somebody and didn't understand what that even means, would you explain that in plainer words to them?
I would probably tend not to say it. But if I did, and someone asked me, I'd say, look, all that is blah, blah, blah.
Yes, like, so it would be explaining.
Yeah, break it down, Yeah.
But
I would tend not to use those.
Because I often had this with Dean now, we'd be having certain chats and having a go at Dean here now, right?
Yeah, no way.
And he'd come across, but he'd cut corners, and I'd say, Dean, hold it for 1 second. I said, maybe I can sort of try to understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But there's people out there that don't understand when you cut the corners. Because you have the knowledge in your head, doesn't mean they have it. So you need to explain in slower,
clarify,
and more clearer words.
Yeah.
So then we have a fight then after that.
Yeah.
But it's very
humbling. Like a married couple, the way you fight, by the way.
He doesn't like being told that.
It's very humbling when Martin says that, because I kind of have to shift perspective, or, you know what I mean? This is how I've seen the world, and now I have a relationship with a traveller man, and in order for him to get the full value of this experience with me, I kind of have to shift into his lane a little bit and see the world sometimes from his lane.
On my side of the fence.
Yeah. And
like when he sort of introduced Jimmy Judge, yeah? Mm. I said, Dean, who's Jimmy Judge?
Who's
I've never heard of Jimmy Judge. So can you tell me a little bit about him? No, you're okay, he said. You'll find out all yourself. Just come and do the podcast.
The spontaneous.
So I walk in the store lost. I don't know who Jimmy Judge is, and I'm still reading for Dean.
How has that worked out for you?
He never told me nothing about you. Remember I told you when I come in here first?
No, I know, but given
I said, it's nice to meet you. I said, Dean told me everything about you.
Yeah.
He told me absolutely nothing.
So you found out yourself.
He just threw me into the deep end. That's how it was.
And you've done pretty good in that.
Well, it was nice to find out from you anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I knew he was winding me up, so I just went along with it.
Of course.
But also, I'm not winding you up. Also, I'm saying, Martin, you're well able.
You're capable.
You're
Well, he
well
done a great job
able
in
for
not
this.
winding me up.
You're well able.
He was
and
winding
this,
me
and
up.
this is a compliment now, and it might be hard to hear it. You're well able to sit in a room with a man or a woman that you've never seen before and ask them the very basic questions. Hello, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's mainly just about knowing how to have a conversation, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Martin, yeah.
Not what the fellow says, not science. What do you call it? Rocket science, is it?
It's not rocket science, no.
Well, you certainly, actually, just before Martin came, I think you were outside and I went out to the toilet and I said hello and shook hands with you. I felt comfortable with you straight away, and then we came in and sat down and it was like, boom, off we go. So.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to be, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good. It's a good start. Put it that way.
Again, I'm going to come. I think it's about intention and energy. It's like we all have this. I think we sense off people. You know, these people mean well.
Yeah.
So you can open up a little bit. You can kind of relax.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah, and it's getting to that point. I used to say this thing, I'd like to get from 0 to existential or all the way in a time frame that's comfortable for both of us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's about getting to that comfortable spot. Because I'm in here and I have the laptop in front of me and I'm aware I'm recording and all this type of stuff, and I'm trying not to focus on that. I'm trying to just sit back, listen, and let the questions and the answers just roll.
I think if you're not too proud of yourself, you can have a conversation with anybody. I'd imagine so anyway. So as he said, let the conversation roll and just free flow and whatever.
And what happens then is Jimmy, who is the psychotherapist bit fades away. Martin, who's the traveller, that fades away. You know what I mean? And it's just
human being.
What you were saying, the human, the authentic comes out. And that's one of the goals of this, is that people listening to this will forget it's a traveller and a countryman and just get into the love of it, the vibe of it.
That reminds me, I like when, say if I get a new appointment, right, by the phone, and then the person comes in the door and they see me, and I can tell by their eyes, they're kind of going, he doesn't look like, they've got an idea of what a psychotherapist, he doesn't sound, I like that.
Yes. So it's a mystery as you start, like.
Yeah, but I like I like the fact that I'm not, a psychotherapist is just a name, it's a label, isn't it? Yeah, I've done some training, but I'm a human being.
Is the name frightening people away, you know?
I suppose it can do, but yeah, it's counselling psychotherapy, but it's just a job in that sense. But you go underneath that, then you're into a human being. I love encounters, human beings meeting in some space. Okay, in therapy, we've got a contract. Technically, you're here to talk about your problems to me, but what's really going to happen is we're going to have a human connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how much of it is beyond the addiction or the pain and the trauma, beyond the human, how much of it goes into that other area, the
transpersonal,
the esoteric, the mystical, the soul, the spiritual? How much of what you do is in that space? Because, as I said, we can talk about all the scientific rational stuff, but most of who we are, I think, is beyond that.
I agree. I'm kind of drawn to that as well. I might mention that to someone, because it freaked them out. But I'm just interested in that. I think there's something spiritual or transpersonal happening all the time anyway.
There's definitely is when I met Martin the first time, I was less interested in the practical things that we were going to do, and I just fell in love with him as a spirit. You know? Mm-hmm.
Well, the first time we met, we almost had a fight. Did you tell you that? that was a great sign, wasn't it?
Did you say I love you too?
That was nice, two people getting to like each other, wasn't it?
Did you say, have a bit of a scrap in the beginning?
Martin asked me what I was doing there. He didn't trust what my
bit
motives.
Of a knock going on.
So I took everything in my pockets and I put my fists up like that, and I said, do you want a knock?
Yeah.
And as soon as he seen that, I kind of used aggression as a pacifying technique.
Absolutely.
So I took it like he had no sense. I said, it must be his first time on a traveller site.
Poor fella.
But do you explore that, or do you have those conversations with people?
If again, alignment. If I was talking to you or Martin and I could see that it was open to that, I might name that. If people are in recovery, for example, they're usually open to that because part of recovery can be that spiritual dimension. So people like those conversations. And I think when you get into deep pain and you're into kind of like trauma and perhaps amends and forgiveness, you're into redemption and mercy, you're into a deeper space in human beings, and you go beyond the everyday problems and people are trying to understand, who am I? What's this about? Where did I come from? Where am I going? It comes to that when you got, when you get past the like, oh, I'm fighting with my girlfriend, or this is happening, or that's
That battered me when I was 8.
Yeah. All that really painful stuff. Then it becomes about the journey. What is this? It leads people into another place. Do you know what I mean?
So it's obviously hard for you then, trying to get, trying to connect with what state of mind these people are at this stage.
Hard, kind of, isn't it? I love it.
Well, if it's your profession, it's not hard. You should say that, right?
Well, no, it could be. But no, it's the kind of work you have to love doing, Martin. It's not something.
But is it work that you have to tread easy? Because, again, if that person comes in, you don't know what state of mind they're in there and then. So you're sort of soaking on them to see like where they're coming from, and like, is there certain angles you have to approach them kind of?
Depends. A little bit of sparring maybe in the beginning. Then you get to know each other, Then, you work it together and you suss it out, and not everyone's going to like you. Some people might come to me and kind of go, I don't like him, and they don't come back. Yeah. But people will connect. You're looking for the connection. Once they connect, you don't mind, and people will tell you.
But your art form, your creativity is in humour, body language, tone, intention, all that type of stuff. That's where you're the magician in your role. That's your alchemical stuff. It is. That's what you do. You balance all those. You make it look like a dance rather than I'm reading off the sheet. It's taken you 30 years to get there, but that's where you're at now. Mm-hmm. You're the wizard with the hat on and the person's coming in, not putting you up on a pedestal, but you're mixing chemicals and you're vibing with this person.
I like the experimentation.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe. Yeah. And that's your art form. Other people write songs, other people make movies. You make conversation.
I actually like to convey, in a weird way, I'd like to be out of a job. There's nothing wrong with you. I know you're in a lot of pain. I know you've got fears, but when you there's nothing wrong with you. You're smashing, you're fine deep down.
Good.
You mightn't believe that today. We'll get there. There's nothing wrong with you. And I like to convey, I like showing people my faults straight away, like farting and, I like seeing a little, you know what I mean? Because people come and think, therapists, they must be, usually when they see me or meet me, they kind of sense, no, he's not like that. He's pretty fucked up in some ways. That's good. But he kind of knows what he's talking about at the same time.
They're not looking for a perfectionist, are they?
That's what I was going to say. You're not the wrong man. Yeah, there is no perfection. Sometimes we think there's an ideal, normal perfection that we should be aspiring to, but then what you're showing people is you're as fucked up as all of us, and we're all fucked up, but that's grand.
It's okay. It's all right. I just happen to be in this position. So people say, oh, yeah. It's great. I'd say you're a great friend or you're a great partner. I go, no, I'm not always. I can be. I'd say, do you always really love yourself, Jimmy? No, sometimes I'm really in a lot of shame and I give myself a really tough time. And then I have to remember what I'm going to be saying to you the next day, and I try to practice that myself.
Do you tell them I'm not here to judge you?
Yay! Wonder where that was coming, Martin. It's interesting. That's the name, Jimmy Judgmental.
Jimmy Judge.
That should be on your podcast.
Jimmy
Do you know somebody? Over the years, people that have I usually get my referrals, recommendation, word of mouth. Dean says, I go to your man Jimmy's all right, blah, blah, blah. Someone will tell someone. But sometimes someone might just pick out, they like my name.
Yeah, Jimmy Judge.
Just think, the
alliteration of it, Jimmy George, and it has kind of like a little rhythm to it. Yeah. Jimmy George. I just want to, before there was psychotherapy, what was the thing?
Well, it's interesting. We were talking about, we're equating the traveling community with Native Americans. I think the thing was shamans. I think the thing was conversations, sitting around the fire chatting.
That's right, yeah.
Martin has painted this lovely picture, and I'd love to do it with him. Go off and sit around the campfire. Maybe not have to go camping, but just sit around the campfire and have the chats. And so one of the reasons I said that is because that was before it, and I think that that's coming back, because recently I went and done a shamanic experience, had some medicine, went off and met Mama Ayahuasca.
Oh, yeah.
Was, had a spiritual tribal experience, and it was very, very healing. I looked at all the resentments, all the stuff that was hiding in the shadows, that we push into the shadows, sometimes that we run from, and then explored all of the stuff that I'm running towards as well, that I'm attracted to.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was beautiful. And it was like an inner counselling journey, a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that what you're providing is an opportunity for people to use you as a vehicle to have a conversation with themselves.
Yeah. It's to reflect. That's couldn't put it better, you know.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, I think originally, if it wasn't sitting around the campfire or wherever, it was the rabbi, it was the priest, it was the shaman, it was
And we've said that on this. They're all the same thing.
or the Dublin taxi man.
Whatever it
I
is.
fucking do this all day. You know what I mean? This is the confession box.
The guru, whoever the guru is the guru. It doesn't.
Dublin taxi man. My dad used to be taxi man. I fucking did all that counselling. You know?
He heard everyone's problems.
Yeah, no problem. I did all that. Yeah, it's grand.
Very good.
Yeah. Whether it's me or whoever the person's coming to, you're really trying to reflect back to them. You have your own inner therapist, really. You know, you can use me for that to realise you're actually okay. You're more than okay. You know, and you tap into your own inner healer, your own inner therapist, your own inner taxi man, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
That's really
and some of the guys like Ramdas would say the guru is just a mirror.
That's all.
You know, and there's different ways to having that conversation. Using psychedelics or using psychotherapists. There's just different ways of getting there. There's many ways to the top of the mountain. If you're open to heading to the top of the mountain, well, you're pointing in the right direction.
Yeah, we'll all get there, whichever. We'll meet each other on the way. You go on that way, I'll meet you around the corner. We're going to be there, you know, but we're not alone. You know,
We're not alone.
we're not alone. Even though we can feel painfully, I can still feel painfully lonely in my soul. I mean, aches, it fucking yearns.
Go and listen to that song, lads. Who, if you're listening to this somewhere, go and listen to You're Not On Your Own Tonight by Damien Dempsey.
Love it. I know I've listened to that.
That's it. You're not on your own.
You're not.
We're all different, but we're all the same.
And here's the paradox. That aching I'm talking about, which I know all human beings have, that's part of why we're not alone, because we all have that together.
Yeah.
Right? Among other things.
What we have in common is that
We ache for each other or for connection.
yeah, we have the pain, we have the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the anxieties. We all have that. Everyone you see or have ever seen or will ever see, they all have that. Just some of us are more honest with ourselves and are less afraid or less insecure. We don't hide it as well.
And just a desire to connect. Just to say,
Well, I suppose it's part of being a human being, isn't it?
absolutely, Martin.
Absolutely,
human
naturally,
being.
yeah.
Did I tell you I can speak tongues? You know tongues?
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. You know how I discovered it?
Go on. Sorry for laughing there, because if this isn't a joke.
I mean, it kind of is.
Right.
Man, God, twice I discovered it. The first time was I was sea swimming down in Ballybunion in the Atlantic in November. And the next time I was in the cold shower, right? So what happened was this was before it became popular, I first went in, I went, people were all healed around me. People getting out of wheelchairs. Then I was in the shower and the same thing happened. You know them weird noises you make when you're cold?
Do you use that in your therapy?
Yeah, speak tongues to people and they God, I feel so much better now.
And how did they understand?
People, they don't know how it is, but that shame has just dropped away from me.
It's voodoo or woo-woo or woo-joo.
Did the fucking woo-woo on you. Don't look into his eyes, man. Never look into their eyes, you know what I mean? Because what's going to happen is they put a fucking spell on you. You know what I mean? Never look at them. Yeah, so tongues, if you want tongues, come to me and I'll...
Jimmy the Tongues.
Jimmy the Tongues in the cold shower. Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Jimmy, also.
Feeling the love in the room from this.
Very good, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Look, we're just sitting around. Just imagine the campfire in the middle there.
That's how we need
Well, I was thinking I'd love to be
part.
part of that. Can I invite myself to that?
Should no one likes the campfires now? Very, very rarely.
Why don't we do it?
Let's do it.
The campfire would be great because that's where all the good conversation would have came up from. And they'd be sitting for hours and hours and hours.
And that lovely
and
glow.
Having and have that mug of tea.
Oh, mug of
and
tea.
no watch to check what time it was to go home to bed. So we'd be there for hours and hours chatting.
That sounds delightful.
I think it's an invitation that
beautiful.
Martin has given us.
Is it an invitation?
Yeah, because we're coming close to Halloween now anyway.
No, honestly, Martin, can we do a campfire?
I don't know where we should do a campfire.
Can we do it up where you live?
I don't think there's room for campfires up where we live.
Can we make room?
Because it's all tar now.
Well, let's get rid of the tar. As my man said, you can't put the tents down in the tar.
No, that's right.
You know what I mean?
It would be it'd be nice to have a bit of crack, all right. There's no doubt about that.
We're going to do it.
But not just the three of us. It has to be it'd be you'd have to have someone there for a bit of banter.
Is that too intimate for you, Martin?
No, what I mean is
there's not enough people.
What I
wanting
mean
to get
is-
talking.
you'd meet about I know it is.
I was thinking of the three of us sitting in silence,
at
holding
least 10
hands.
people,
Holding
yeah.
hands, talking in tongues.
If you had at least 10 people to have a bit of crack and a bit of banter and a bit of whatever life stories.
Might be too intimate and human for a little moment there, Martin.
Possibly, so we have to cancel the campfire then.
We can get some magic mushrooms and be flying over.
We call it the cant. We call it the campfire. We can't do it.
There might be a moment where that light hits our eyes and we all look at each other for a moment and have a little
If
special.
the spark's not in your eyes, we can't even see where you're going and how you're getting home.
Listen, thank you both very much for making you so welcome.
Plus, Dean doesn't make nice tea, so I won't be having no tea in there.
Episode 19, A Traveller and a Countryman, Jimmy,
Yeah, that was a bit of crack.
you little beauty.
Bit of fun. Absolutely.
Thanks, lads. See you later.
God bless.
So that's us for this episode, A Traveller and a Countryman podcast. If you like it, let us know, share it around, and we'll see you on the road.